For my graduation, they left a frozen dinner on the counter and a congrats text in the family group chat. A week earlier, they threw my sister a backyard bash with fireworks and a drone photographer. When I asked why, Dad shrugged. "You're not really the celebrating type." I didn't reply. I just grabbed my bag and walked out the door. That night, my uncle texted, "Why's everyone freaking out? I, 24M, graduated summa cum laude from engineering school last Tuesday. 4 years of sleepless nights, countless projects, and maintaining a 3.9 GPA while working part-time to help with expenses." The ceremony was at 2 p.m., and I'd sent the details to our family group chat weeks ago. When I got home that evening, still wearing my cap and gown, the house was empty except for a frozen lasagna sitting on the kitchen counter with a sticky note that read, "Congrats," in Mom's handwriting. My phone buzzed with a single message in the family group chat from Dad, saying, "Congrats on graduating," followed by a thumbs-up emoji from Mom and my sister. That was it. 4 years of my life reduced to a frozen dinner and a text message. But here's what made my blood boil. Just 8 days earlier, my sister had graduated high school. Not valedictorian, not even honor roll. She barely scraped by with a 2.8 GPA. Yet our entire backyard had been transformed into what looked like a wedding reception. White string lights hung between the trees, a professional DJ set up speakers, and Mom had hired an actual drone photographer to capture aerial shots of the party. The whole extended family showed up. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. Dad grilled for 30 people while Mom fluttered around taking pictures with her professional camera. They even had custom t-shirts made with my sister's graduation photo on them. The fireworks display at the end cost more than my textbooks for an entire semester. I had helped set up that party. Spent my Saturday morning hanging lights and moving tables while everyone praised my sister for finally making it through. When I asked Mom why they were going all out, she just smiled and said my sister needed the encouragement since school had been so hard for her. So when I walked into that empty house on my graduation day, staring at that pathetic frozen dinner, something inside me snapped. I found Dad in the garage, tinkering with his motorcycle like nothing had happened. I asked him directly why my graduation didn't warrant even a cake from the grocery store when my sister got a full production. He looked up from his bike, wiped his hands on a rag, and shrugged like I was asking about the weather. He told me I wasn't really the celebrating type. Said I was always so focused and independent that they figured I didn't need all the fuss. He actually used the word fuss to describe acknowledging 4 years of academic excellence. I didn't argue, didn't scream, didn't throw the frozen dinner at the wall like every fiber of my being wanted to. I just nodded, walked back to my room, and started packing. 20 minutes later, I had everything that mattered stuffed into 2 duffel bags and my backpack. My diploma, my laptop, important documents, and enough clothes for a week. I left my key on the kitchen counter next to that frozen dinner and walked out. I drove straight to my friend Jake's apartment across town. He was shocked when I showed up with bags, asking if I could crash on his couch for a few days. When I explained what happened, he just shook his head and told me to stay as long as I needed. That night, around 11 p.m., my phone started buzzing. First Mom, then Dad, then my sister. All asking where I was, why I left, telling me I was being dramatic. I ignored every call and text. Then my Uncle Mike texted me privately asking why everyone was freaking out in the family group chat. Apparently, my sudden disappearance had caused quite the stir. Mom was posting about how worried she was. Dad was calling me ungrateful, and my sister was playing the victim, saying she didn't understand why I was mad at her. I screenshot the family group chat from my graduation day, just that one congrats message, and sent it to Uncle Mike along with a photo of the frozen dinner. Then I sent him pictures from my sister's graduation party that I'd taken while helping set up. The contrast was stark. Uncle Mike called me immediately. He was furious. Turns out, my parents had told the whole family that I specifically requested a low-key graduation because I was too busy with job interviews to celebrate. They made it sound like it was my choice. Update 1. Uncle Mike did something I never expected. He called an emergency family meeting for that Sunday, 3 days after I left. He demanded my parents explain the discrepancy between what they told everyone and what actually happened. I wasn't there, but Jake's girlfriend worked at the restaurant where they met, and she overheard everything from the next table. Uncle Mike had printed out screenshots of both graduation celebrations, my sister's elaborate party photos from Facebook, and my single text message. He laid them out on the table and asked my parents to explain. Mom apparently broke down crying, claiming they thought I wouldn't want a big celebration because I was so mature and independent. Dad got defensive, saying they'd spent enough money on my education and couldn't afford another big party. That's when Uncle Mike dropped the bomb. He'd done some math. My sister's party cost roughly $3,000 between the DJ, photographer, catering, decorations, and fireworks. Meanwhile, I'd been paying for my own textbooks, car insurance, and phone bill for 2 years while maintaining my grades and working part-time. Uncle Mike told them they had 1 week to make things right, or he'd make sure everyone in the family knew exactly how they treated their son's academic achievement versus their daughter's bare minimum effort. By Monday morning, my phone was blowing up again. This time it was different. Mom was sobbing through voicemails, begging me to come home so they could fix this. Dad left a message saying he'd been thinking about what Uncle Mike said and wanted to talk. But it was my sister's message that really got to me. She admitted she'd always known she was the favorite and that she felt guilty about the party difference. She said she'd tried to bring it up to Mom and Dad after I left, but they shut her down. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on my job search and started looking for my own apartment. Jake's couch was comfortable, but I needed my own space to figure out my next move. Update 2. The following Saturday, exactly 1 week after Uncle Mike's ultimatum, my entire extended family showed up at my parents' house for what Mom had advertised as a belated graduation celebration for me. I only found out because my cousin Sarah texted me pictures. They'd recreated my sister's party setup, same white lights, same DJ, even hired the same drone photographer. The custom t-shirts this time had my graduation photo and summa cum laude printed on them. But here's the thing, I wasn't there. And everyone knew it. Uncle Mike had apparently told the whole family the real story throughout the week. So when they showed up to this elaborate party for someone who wasn't even present, it became incredibly awkward. My parents kept making excuses about how I was being stubborn and would come around eventually. My Aunt Linda apparently asked Mom point-blank why they thought throwing a party without the guest of honor would solve anything. Dad got angry and started ranting about how ungrateful I was, how they'd sacrificed so much for my education, and how I was tearing the family apart over nothing. That's when my grandmother stepped in. She's 78 and doesn't usually get involved in family drama, but she told Dad he was being an idiot. She said in her day, academic achievement was the highest honor a child could bring to a family, and that I had every right to feel hurt. The party lasted about an hour before people started leaving. My cousin Sarah said it was the most uncomfortable family gathering she'd ever attended. Meanwhile, I'd spent that Saturday apartment hunting and found a perfect one-bedroom place about 15 minutes from my new job. I'd landed a position at a tech startup with a salary that would let me live comfortably on my own. The signing bonus alone was more than my parents spent on my sister's party. Update 3. 3 weeks after I moved out, my sister showed up at my new apartment. I was surprised to see her because she'd never been one to take initiative in family conflicts. She looked nervous as she asked if we could talk. She told me she'd been thinking about our whole childhood and realized how differently our parents treated us. She said she always got praise for mediocre efforts while my achievements were just expected. She admitted that she'd started to resent the pressure of being the baby who needed constant encouragement, especially when she saw how self-sufficient I'd become. Then she said something that really surprised me. She decided to give back the car Dad bought her for graduation, a used Honda Civic that was still worth about $8,000. She wanted to split the money with me as a graduation gift since I'd never gotten anything equivalent. I told her I appreciated the gesture, but I didn't want her to sacrifice something she'd received just to make up for our parents' favoritism. She insisted, saying she was starting community college in the fall and could take the bus or get a part-time job to buy her own car. We talked for 3 hours that day. Really talked, maybe for the first time in our lives. She apologized for never standing up for me when she noticed the different treatment. I apologized for sometimes resenting her for getting attention I craved. She asked if I'd consider coming to Sunday dinner the following week. Mom and Dad had been asking about me constantly, and she thought maybe we could all sit down and have an honest conversation. I told her I'd think about it, but I wasn't ready to pretend everything was fine just because they'd thrown a belated party to save face in front of the family. 2 days later, Dad showed up at my apartment. No phone call, no warning. He just knocked on my door at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. He looked older somehow, like the past month had aged him. He asked if he could come in, and I let him. We sat in my small living room, and for the first time in my life, my father apologized to me. Not a half-hearted "sorry you feel that way" apology, but a real acknowledgement that he'd failed me as a parent. He admitted that he'd always seen me as the easy kid who didn't need much attention, while my sister required constant encouragement and support. He said he realized too late that just because I was self-sufficient didn't mean I didn't want recognition for my accomplishments. He told me he was proud of me, not just for graduating, but for having the backbone to walk away when I wasn't being treated with respect. He said he'd been thinking about his own father, who never celebrated anything, and how he'd promised himself he'd be different. Somehow, he'd ended up making the same mistakes in a different way. Then he asked what he could do to make things right. Not just the graduation situation, but everything. He wanted to rebuild our relationship from scratch if I was willing. I told him it would take time, that I couldn't just forget years of feeling invisible in my own family. But I appreciated him coming to talk to me directly instead of sending messages through other people. We agreed to start with monthly dinners, just the two of us, to work on our relationship without the pressure of family dynamics. He promised to treat me as an individual rather than just the responsible one who didn't need attention. As he was leaving, he handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000. Not as a graduation gift, he explained, but as back payment for all the times my achievements went unrecognized. He said he'd been calculating in his head all the times I'd gotten a frozen dinner while my sister got a celebration, and this was his attempt to balance the scales. I didn't cash the check right away. I kept it on my refrigerator for 2 weeks, thinking about what it represented. It wasn't really about the money. It was about acknowledgement, about finally being seen. The family dinner my sister had asked about never happened. Instead, we started having smaller gatherings. My sister and I would meet for coffee every couple of weeks. Dad and I had our monthly dinners. Mom took longer to come around, still defensive about her parenting choices, but she eventually started texting me regularly just to check in. Uncle Mike became an unexpected ally in all of this. He'd apparently been watching the family dynamics for years and felt guilty for not speaking up sooner. He told me he was proud of how I'd handled the situation, that walking away had forced everyone to confront problems they'd been ignoring for years. 6 months later, I'm settled into my new life. My job is challenging and rewarding. My apartment feels like home, and I'm building healthier relationships with my family members individually rather than trying to fit into the old, dysfunctional dynamic. The frozen dinner is still in my freezer, unopened, not as a reminder of hurt, but as a symbol of the moment I decided I deserved better. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic. It's simply refusing to accept treatment that diminishes your worth and building a life that reflects your true value. My parents learned that taking someone for granted has consequences. My sister learned that favoritism hurts everyone involved, even the favorite. And I learned that sometimes you have to walk away from people you love to teach them how to love you properly. The family group chat is more active now, with everyone sharing updates and actually responding to each other's news. When my sister started community college last month, I was the first to congratulate her. When I got promoted at work, the response was immediate and enthusiastic from everyone. It took a frozen dinner and a missing graduation party to fix years of broken family dynamics. Sometimes the smallest slights reveal the biggest problems, and sometimes the quiet ones make the loudest statements when they finally decide to speak up.